Yes.
So, no, I haven't had. How did you get my name anyway on something like this? I've never seen that before, but. Okay.
Gregory left this out of his police report. That is very important to note for when we start getting into more of the guilty verdicts, because not all of Gregory and Davis's interviews were recorded. If their police reports can have such significant omissions as is
Partially what some chatters brought up is that, like, why would any of them lie? What is actually interesting is what some chatters were bringing up in the chat. That at the top of the hour, there's a 60-second ad break, right? And if you no longer want to see the ads, if you no longer want to see the ads, all you need to do is subscribe. You can subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Okay? I had to bring the segues back, dude. You guys were fucking complaining that, you know, it wasn't. It just didn't feel right not segueing, okay? Early as usual. I'm fucking 4 minutes early, bitch. Shut up. Here's the 1 minute ad now. Okay, what the chatters were saying, and I was actually going to say something, and then I realized it's a good time to do a segue. What some chatters were saying, that there might have been multiple officers that have done, like, rapes. Because if you recall the testimonies, like, they kind of describe cops that might be like different cops. You know what I mean? Like, they're close enough to what he looks like a little bit, but like, he's a very unique looking thumb, you know? So I feel like they would all nail him on like a jacked ass cop, you know what I mean? So what I feel like could be something is that, like, he was a rapist, but then there were multiple other cops that were also doing rapes, and then they like tried to find a narrative to like hit him with all of it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, out of the 13 cases, like 6 of them were him, and then the other they tallied onto him or something, depending on what the evidence is. I don't know, but it does that could be the case. But having said that, of course, like, these are victims with a lot of trauma, so like the recall is not going to be great regardless.
shown in the Rains case, then interviews that are documented only by detectives' written accounts should be treated as highly suspect. After initially denying any inappropriate experiences, she stated a police officer had once exposed himself to her at a gas station, and that officer was black. Gregory showed no interest in this incident, and after further prodding, Rains recalled a police officer stopping her and asking her to pull her bra out and shake it in order to check her for drugs. She characterized it as a relatively innocuous and routine encounter, and placed it in the summer of 2013. By the time she was at trial, she alleged the officer had told her to expose herself, and moved the date to March 14th of 2014.
Dude, another thing that is also interesting to think about is, like, you don't feel comfortable being able to do this if you don't feel like other cops are doing it and getting away with it. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems too perfect of a narrative to just, like, pin on one cop. Like, one guy was just, like, serially raping all these women. It could be the case, but it certainly feels like there could have been more than one, and there could have been more than one, and then they just, like, literally tied it all to this dude because, like, he was the most, like, dead to rights guilty, especially with, like, the skin cell, maybe, you know what I mean? Because, like, the skin cell is, like, pretty fucking solid, and the 57-year-old with no priors. Like, that's wild, you know? Like, a person like that doesn't just fucking make this shit up. But I don't know. All these fucking instances do seem to be very similar to one another.
Holtzclaw had stopped her for approximately 10 minutes. When asked about the reason for the date change, she stated it was because the DA had told her that was the correct one. Kayla Lyles made her accusation through her parole officer on September 16th after missing set meetings which put her in violation of her parole. At this point, Holtzclaw had been shown on the news and she knew Detective Davis had been trying to contact her. Her estimation of the amount of time it took for Holtzclaw to rape her shifted dramatically, from 5 to 10 minutes when she was initially interviewed, and 10 minutes if that during the preliminary hearing, to up to 30 minutes by the time she took the stand. The prosecution placed the date of her rape on June 18th, which means they argued he did it shortly before raping Janie Liggins and less than 24 hours before he handed in his clothes. Despite the extent of the alleged rape and its proximity to Holtzclaw submitting physical evidence, no DNA profile matching Lyle's was found on his uniform.
See?
And so with 21 years covered and 242 to go, it's time to look at the rest of the guilty verdicts. First, we'll start with Sherry Ellis. Issues with the Ellis case begin from the very first time she spoke to Detective Davis over the phone. Davis stated to Ellis,
I work in sex crimes, and I've been working some cases, and I received a tip that you may have been sexually assaulted by a police officer.
Of course, she had received no such tip. Davis and...
For the record, even if you were sexually assaulted by another cop, you see another cop on the news for doing sexual harassment, like, and you're trying to lighten your sentence or whatever, or you think you're gonna get like a better situation out of this, like, you could absolutely fucking change your testimony to this. That's another reason why they might have that person might have given like might have changed their testimony, or they could have been traumatized and misremember the details, which is also something that happens very frequently. So it's, but by the way, no matter what, the one thing that we can all agree on is that this motherfucker got not because of the detectives, but in spite of the detectives, okay? Holy shit. They were, Jesus, Lord mercy, dude. They are...
Gregory had just gone through the records of people Holtzclaw had run searches on and narrowed down a list of people who fit the profile they had created. African-American females with a record of drug abuse and or prostitution. The detectives were within their rights to put their theory that they were dealing with a serial predator to the test, but the correct way to put it to the test would have been to interview their subjects, asking open-ended questions and seeing what came up, not telling them from the outset they suspected them to be victims of sexual assault. And there were some areas of Ellis's account that started to seriously drift from implicating Holtzclaw.
Tell me your description of him.
He's black.
He's okay. He's a black male.
Muscular.
Muscular. How tall could you tell? You're pretty tall. How tall are you? How tall are you?
5'11".
Is he taller than you or shorter than you?
Like right here, maybe.
That's now not one but two people that have said the person was black.
Like that?
So you think he's shorter than you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ellis recalling her assailant as being black and somewhere in the vicinity of 5'9" should have been a rather alarming contradiction to the theory that the 6'2" Japanese Caucasian Holtzclaw was the perpetrator. But just as before...
Bro, there's definitely multiple rapists. I mean, I can't say definitely, but it literally feels like there is... It feels like there's more than one cop out there. Because, like, what the fuck?
hits were taken as validating the theory, and misses were written off as minor bumps in the road. And just as with Terry Morris, they failed to investigate an alternative suspect.
And if they were worried about, like, a potential backlash, like a BLM movement starting in Oklahoma as well, it would be better to pin it on one fucking cop with a swift case that they threw the book at, rather than widespread department corruption and, like, mass rape in the department, because that, no matter what happens, would have absolutely warranted a fucking protests, widespread protests in the state.
Suspect that fit the description. Lieutenant Alex Edwards was working the same late-night shift as Holtzclaw on May 6th, the date they ultimately placed the assault based on GPS data and records checks, and he was patrolling an area just to the east of where Holtzclaw was on duty. Unfortunately, things get really interesting after Holtzclaw's conviction. On October 14th of 2016, Edwards was arrested.
Oh, come on, dude!
In a prostitution sting operation. He was also found to have been negotiating oral sex among other sex acts via text messages with a prostitute, as well as feeding her information about police operations. Edward's
Wow.
known misdeeds and movements on May 6th are not enough to convincingly implicate him as having raped Sherry Ellis, and you can't fault investigators for not being able to see the future. But the fact that despite his appearance being much closer to Ellis's description, he was never so much as shown in a photo lineup to her, is yet another example.
Dude, oh my God, they're so bad. They're so bad. Oh my God, this entire department is fucked, dude. That's insane, dude. That's fucking insane, dude. Yo, I should be a detective. I literally, dude, my vibe checks are 10-10, okay? 100% accuracy. I'm sorry. Holy fucking shit.
Example of Davis's relentless bias. Holtzclaw's GPS data also presents some big problems for Ellis's story. Here's a quick explanation from Brian Bates, taken from the documentary Daniel in the Den by Michelle Malkin.
The GPS says they never stopped at the schoolyard.
What the fuck? Michelle Malkin. Wait, what? Y'all remember Michelle Malkin, dude? White supremacist lady? Imagine getting fucking fired from Fox News for being a white supremacist, dude. That's crazy, because like that's the den of white supremacy. I assume she's like a Daniel Holtzclaw supporter. How do you remember that? What? She's Asian? Yes. Michelle Malkin was literally ousted by Young America Foundation because she supported Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes. Asian white supremacists defending Hispanic white supremacists. It's a very odd couple. Alt-right with Asian wives. Yeah, libertarian guys with Asian wives, dude.
GPS says he was only in the area for a minute or two and was simply driving by.
So we stopped by the infamous former schoolyard, where Ellis claims he parked and raped her for 10 minutes.
His GPS shows that he never stopped. It shows that he went about 2.3 miles per hour. It shows
Look how disgusted she looks.
that he drove through the area, he was here about 2 minutes, and that he left. He certainly didn't stop. He certainly didn't spend 10 minutes. So
There's someone at my work that's in that Facebook group? No. You know someone who's a libertarian guy with an Asian wife? That's awesome. I love that. It's like seeing a unique animal in the wild, dude. Fascinating.
he certainly didn't commit the sexual assault that she claimed.
It would have been impossible.
Would have been
to
impossible.
do what he did.
This won't be the last time a clip from that documentary is used to cast doubt on Daniel Holtzclaw's guilt, and so due to the socio-political undertones that make this case so toxic, it should be noted for disclosure that Michelle Malkin is by any reasonable standard a partisan. As an openly and staunchly conservative journalist, as well as a consistent critic of the BLM movement, she certainly has a dog in this fight. But when dealing with a serious case like this, it's important to play the ball and not the player. Malkin's research on this topic has been thorough and substantive, no matter what her motivations may be. One final note on Sherry Ellis. She was interviewed for a 2020 piece on the case, and parts of that interview shed light on how problematic it can be to make a decision on whether or not someone is telling the truth based only on how truthful they appear.
He drove me to a school, and let's side of the school in the back. And he opened the door, he told me to get out and pull my pants down.
You describe him as being like this to you, right? Mm-hmm. And you're about 5'10"?
I'm 5'11".
5'11"?
Yeah.
Daniel Holtzclaw's like 6'2".
Oh, see? I still didn't know that.
I mean, that's kind of a big difference, right?
Yeah, well, I really didn't pay any attention. I really didn't. I just knew it was being done to me.
Damn, dude. That's a big fucking height difference, dude. 100% right on multiple cops doing this. They pick vulnerable women. This is easier to discredit them. It's absolutely horrific. Dude, I'm telling you, this reeks of like, this reeks of multiple cops, dude.
Tabitha Barnes' first interview with Rocky Gregory was not recorded, but he reports opening it by telling her he's received a tip that she's been the victim of sexual assault, and by the end of it, she was claiming to have been assaulted and harassed by an OCPD officer. The interview had to be cut short, allegedly because she was fatigued, though some have theorised, for reasons that will soon become apparent, that she was too high on PCP to continue. In her second interview, Barnes states
Also, she might have had heels on. That's kind of a fucked way to ask that question. Oh, so now 3 inches is a lot? Tell my ex? Okay. I'll tell her tonight. Got him.
States confidently that her first encounter with Holtzclaw, when he had her expose herself, was on March 4th. The reason she was adamant on that was because she could link it to waiting for her food stamp card to renew, while in her car with her friend and daughter. GPS data showed there was no way Holtzclaw could have been anywhere near Barnes' residence that night. By the time she got to trial, the date had changed to February 27th with no explanation. On the 27th, Holtzclaw did a check on Barnes' car because he was suspicious of her being parked.
Bro, I hate repeating this over and over again because people are going to get mad at me. That cop is very fucking unique looking. Okay? He's literally half white, half Asian in fucking Oklahoma. He's 6'2" and jacked as fuck. You mean to tell me that despite all the trauma, like, they wouldn't literally fucking point to him as, like, straight up, like, he sticks out like a sore thumb in a lineup of cops who all look like potato sacks? He's gonna look a little bit different, dude. Which leads me to absolutely believe that there were multiple cops. Like, because I believe the other victims' testimonies, but like they were pointing at a very specific cop. Like they were pointing at a different cop. Because if that was like him doing all of these, you mean to tell me that all these women wouldn't be like, there's a fucking jacked ass 6'2" Asian cop, like.
Across the road from a suspected crack house, which happened to be her own. Again, he didn't try to hide the encounter, radioing it in. He even received backup. She placed her next encounter when Holtzclaw allegedly broke into her house before having her expose herself again, on March 25th, and this time that did match a date. Holtzclaw was confirmed as having gone into her residence. Again, he radioed this in. He had been patrolling the area and noticed that Barnes' house, which had been burglarized less than a month prior, had no car in the driveway, no lights on, and the door was conspicuously wide open. The very next evening, he again called in a stop at Barnes' house, knocked on her door and requested to search the house for drugs. This much is documented fact and matches her initial account. Holtzclaw's calling any of these interactions aside, it may be starting to come across as harassment at this point. But bear in mind, Barnes' residence was widely known as a crack house. Holtzclaw was within his rights to request a search and did not force himself in when Barnes invoked her right.
Was he within his rights to request a search?
To refuse a search without a warrant. There was never any corroborating evidence or witness for any of her allegations of sexual assault, and so many details surrounding them changed back and forth and back again between her initial report and the trial that it's impossible to list all the discrepancies within a few minutes. Her associates, partner, and children were never able to reliably and consistently support her version of events for any given encounter. Tabitha Barnes was also at the center of one of the most...
The reason why I don't think he's fully innocent... Okay, I gotta point this out as well. The reason why I don't think he was fully innocent is because the moment that detectives come on him and like decide to point the finger at him, the finger of blame at him, if he was truly innocent and he was also like investigating the other cops, like a Serpico style situation where like he's like investigating the other cops and that's why they use him as a fall guy or whatever, he would be like, you're doing this because of my investigation. Like he would have immediately got up and been like, fuck that, that's bullshit. You're literally doing this because I was investigating these other cops or some shit like that. That's why I don't think he was like, oh my God, you guys, come on, dude. Come on. I'm trying to fucking, like I said, Fall Guys and everyone is fucking spamming. Okay, people are bored of this story, I can tell. It's almost done. Okay,
sensational
chat, chill.
trial moments. During her testimony, it became apparent that Barnes was high on PCP. The judge had to actually cut it short for her to step down and get tested after she denied having taken anything more than her prescription medication. She was allowed to resume her testimony later in the afternoon after the court determined she had sufficiently sobered up. According to Detective Davis's report, she immediately told Carla Johnson that she had received a tip that she may have been sexually assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer. The interview was not recorded. Johnson stated her assault occurred on May 26th at about 2 a.m, and Holtzclaw was confirmed as having stopped her on that date, but a couple of hours earlier, around midnight. Johnson initially stated that Holtzclaw had grabbed her breasts over her shirt during a pat search and that she was not wearing a bra. By the time of the preliminary hearing, that changed to him putting his hands under her shirt and bra that she was wearing. Then at trial, it was a combination of the two. Over the shirt, but she was wearing a bra. When recounting Holtzclaw's fondling of her vagina, she described her protestations using language that was oddly similar to the account Janie Liggins had given in the news.
I said, "Oh no, sir." I said, "You ain't supposed to do this." I said, "You ain't supposed to do this to me, sir."
No corroborating physical evidence was ever unearthed, nor were any eyewitnesses found despite the incident taking place on a busy street. Rosetta Great claimed that Holtzclaw had given her a ride home.
Yeah. Some of them, they were just like, we're throwing the book at him.
When he came across her high on crack and prostituting herself, and that he had not called the transportation in.
On the road, no SCL left end is great. George, Robert, Adam, Tom, Edward. First name is Rosetta, Robert, Ocean, Sam, Edward, Tom, Adam. Date of birth 76, black female.
45 out on 1 at 14th and Jordan.
45 is 1014 with a female is 60 Culberson. Drive starting mileage is 09.
She stated that when she was performing oral sex on Holtzclaw, she found it difficult as he was so unkempt. Holtzclaw frequently shaved his privates. Because of her discomfort, she claimed she had to wipe her mouth on her hand, and then she wiped her hand on a nearby chair. She also claimed to have wiped her vagina with a towel immediately after Holtzclaw left, which she then threw back in the closet. No DNA from Daniel Holtzclaw was found on the chair or anywhere else in Rosetta Great's room, and the towel was never found. None of Sarita Bowen's interviews were ever recorded. When Kim Davis first contacted her and told her she had received
It's kind of surprising that they fucking... Okay, this is like actually kind of wild that a criminal justice system that normally would treat like black victims as though they are the criminals themselves would be willing to use that just simple testimony as a fucking enough to indict like this. That is wild. Can you just watch the video match? I mean, dude, that you don't think that is like bizarre that the criminal justice system, our criminal justice system that you're very aware of, would take the testimony that doesn't even match Daniel Holtzclaw's like profile, the testimony of a black sex worker. No shot. Like, in no other circumstance would that be enough for cops to even fucking look in the direction. Especially because, like, especially bizarre considering that, like, there are, in a lot of instances, like, they don't even test for fucking DNA in situations like this when DNA evidence does exist. You know what I mean? Like, cops are not exactly notorious for... They're not exactly known for handling rape cases appropriately. You know what I mean? Like, you don't often hear stories of cops immediately going to jail, or cops catching, not even another cop, but cops catching, like, a rapist and locking them up for doing sex crimes against a black sex worker. That's so weird.
Tip that she was a possible victim of inappropriate behavior involving an Oklahoma City police officer. She acted excited, according to Davis's own report. She placed her assault in July, but her encounter with Holtzclaw was confirmed as happening on the 21st of May. She initially said he had ejaculated, but by the time she got to trial, she said she wasn't sure. She could also not remember whether or not he pulled his pants down. She did not report any assault until over a month after Holtzclaw's identity had been revealed in the news. No physical evidence was ever found to support her claims. Regina Copeland's account of how her assault transpired was categorically disproven by Holtzclaw's GPS data. She claimed Holtzclaw allowed her to drive her car to her relative's house, as he followed her. Holtzclaw's car never even went down her relative's street. His GPS data also revealed that his car was stopped on Miramar Boulevard, the only location the rape could have taken place, for a maximum of 4 minutes and 33 seconds, minus the time he radioed his location into dispatch. Copeland initially stated that the rape had taken a long time. At the preliminary hearing, she gave a time frame of 5 to 10 minutes, and then at trial that changed to no more than 3 minutes or so. She did not report any assault until over a month after Holtzclaw's identity had been revealed on the news. No physical evidence was ever found to support her claims. And then there's Adira Gardner. This is a big one. As you'll recall, this is the 17-year-old whose DNA was found on the fly of Holtzclaw's pants. That was one of the biggest elements of the story in the media, and one of the main talking points for the prosecution. But it's another example of how some of the elements in this case that appear to be extremely damning can become much more benign as you continue to learn more about them. To help explain how that's so in this instance, here's another clip from Michelle Malkin's documentary.
Dr. Dan Crane, professor of biological sciences at Wright State University, is a leading expert on DNA.
The presence of a DNA profile doesn't tell us anything about the time frame or the circumstances under which that DNA came to be on the evidence sample.
And it's easier than you might think for one of these tiny particles to transfer.
I have two different
Wait, get the fuck out of here, dude. Okay, that part is bullshit.
kinds of sweetener here. I got sugar and an artificial sweet.
Let me look. I want to look into the background of this fucking guy. Okay, that's what I want to look at.
And I think what we can do is just show how the transfer could take place. Let me hand you the actual sugar, and I've got here a sweetener. If we just rip them open, right, I'm going to put some of my sweetener on my hand. Full gram worth of sweetener. So I got a pretty sweet hand right now, right?
Mine's all naturally sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy needs to also go to jail, and so does Michelle Malkin. Michelle Malkin never passes the vibe check. This guy also failing the vibe check. Okay, what the fuck's this dude's name? I gotta look at this background. This dude seems like a fucking crank. Okay, 100%, dude. No shot. You can't use this fucking dude as like, no shot, dude. What's his name?
Yeah, so the thing is that it's not going to be at all surprising if at this point we shake hands, right? And we come away, and I got a lot of sugar on my hand, right?
here.
And you got a lot of sugar on your hand, right? If we were now to take our hands and pick something up, like a water bottle, for instance, would you be surprised if when I put the water bottle down, we look and we find some sugar grains on that, right? I think that's entirely reasonable.
That's frightening. My DNA, the sugar, is on that water bottle, even though I didn't touch it. It transferred when we shook hands. And it gets even scarier. What if we never even touched?
If I grabbed a purse the way that Daniel did when he was rifling through...
Fuck, they're right. Skin cells do fucking shed like crazy. All that dust that you see in your house is like literally accumulated skin cells. But it is inside of the zipper though. Like DNA doesn't always mean fingerprints. I mean, how the fuck did it end up inside of his pants though?
His 17-year-old accusers, and I pick up an object, and if I handed it back to you,
Sure.
what would be on it?
Interestingly, all that I see is sugar. I don't see any of the artificial sweetener, but I don't think it's at all remarkable that we would find some of that sugar on this article. And if I were to handle the article now, what we may find is the sugar's gone and it's on my hand. None of the artificial sweetener is on my hand that I can see, but I've got some sugar on my hand, and if I were to rub my shirt, the sugar's gone, it's on my shirt. If we did a DNA test, we might find only your DNA and none of mine from that transfer that we've just done.
And if you had gone to the bathroom, is it possible that some of that sugar could have transferred to the fly of your pants?
Well, of course, right? There's nothing magical about the fly of somebody's pants compared to any other part of their clothing.
There's another piece of the DNA puzzle that Daniel's appellate team believes is crucial, right here in the crime lab analysis. It appears as if there are at least 3 contributors to the sample that ID'd the teen, including an unknown male's DNA.
To hammer the point home even further, it's not just that innocuous transfer is as likely an explanation as direct contact from a rape. The former is far more likely. Gardner claimed that Holtzclaw vaginally raped her. If that were to happen, with the fly of his pants being in close proximity to Gardner's genitals, you would expect some vaginal secretion to be present, as opposed to the billionth of a gram of skin cells that were discovered, especially given the alleged event took place on the evening of June 17th, the night before Holtzclaw's June 18th interrogation, after which he handed in his pants. If you've been paying close attention, that detail might have given you somewhat of a shock. Gardner's is one of 3 allegations placed within a 24-hour period, along with Janie Liggins and Kayla Lyles. The prosecution's official version of events that they argued in court was that Daniel Holtzclaw raped Adara Gardner sometime in the evening of the 17th, then raped Kayla Lyles in the early morning hours of the 18th, went back to the station, clocked out and turned off his computer, and then raped Janie Liggins on his way home from work. An absolute rampage, and yet he left barely a trace. The prosecution also lied about the evidence. In his closing, Gayland Giger told the jury emphatically that the DNA had come from the walls of Gardner's vagina. This was in spite of the fact that the state...
Yeah, dude, no shot. He's not innocent. I don't think he's innocent. I think my theory is correct. My multiple cop theory is fucking correct, dude. No fucking shot. I mean, that's insane that he, like... There's no shot that he did, like, 3 rapes in a row like that. That's crazy. That in that time frame, like... The second male DNA definitely supports the multiple cops theory. Well, not necessarily. The second male DNA just shows that it's that easy to have, like, skin cell DNA get into the inside of your pants. Which one are you confident on? I don't even fucking know anymore, dude. Confirmation bias? I'm glad the Discord is nuked because they'd be triggered by your takes right now. Okay, no need to talk about the Discord currently, okay? It is nice, though, that there aren't, like, a sea of, like, 12-month subscribers being like, why are you defending rapists or some shit? Or that I'm a white supremacist now who is, like, who loves cops or some shit. It blows my mind that, like, they found him guilty beyond reasonable doubt on some stuff that, like, is actually genuinely shocking, especially considering that, like, witness testimony is iffy already, without, like, additional supplementary evidence. And witness testimony, in a lot of instances, in the eyes of a jury in our criminal justice system, completely revolves around the credibility of the witness and someone who I already mentioned is like a black sex worker is not going to be seen as credible by our criminal justice system at all. So that is really strange.
Its own expert had conceded earlier in the trial that it was not possible to determine exactly where Gardner's DNA had come from. Unfortunately, that moment was very fleeting, and Holtzclaw's attorney failed to object to Giger's assertion.
Is your name Adept the Best _ What the fuck?
A final point on the DNA evidence before unpacking the last case. As was mentioned earlier,
like if their testimony at least corroborated like his physical appearance, then it would be a little different. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be one of those like, where's the physical evidence, Andes? But like their fucking testimonies their testimony doesn't even match like the profile of the predator here. Whether it was his like dick being unkempt, or whether it's like his fucking height, or straight up calling him black. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. Like how do you fucking lock up a 6'2", half white, half Asian dude, or even convict someone who's 6'2", half white, half Asian for the only on the basis that the eyewitness testimony says this is a 5'9" black cop. That's wild. Like that is actually wild.
The argument that the state had political motivations for pursuing Holtzclaw with such vigor has been characterized by some as baseless and conspiratorial. Giger's mischaracterization of the evidence was recently put forward in a filing to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals. In its decision, the court had this to say about the charge that Giger lied to the jury.
Appellant claims the prosecutor argued facts not in evidence. Appellant argues that neither the evidence nor science supports the prosecutor's argument in final closing that the DNA came from AG's vaginal walls and was transferred where AG said it would be on his pants. The DNA expert witness referred to the source of DNA as biological material, which could have been transferred in a liquid. AG herself testified that appellant put his penis in her vagina, suggesting that the DNA came from AG's vagina, transferred by the vaginal fluids, was a reasonable inference from the evidence.
Put simply, what the court is saying is that because Gardner said that Holtzclaw raped her...
Was that a crossover? Hog.
That in and of itself is enough evidence to support the assertion the DNA came from her vagina as opposed to innocuous transfer. Does this strike you as the reasoning of a learned jurist, or circular...
Dude, that's crazy. I'm sorry. If there's like vaginal penetration, then it wouldn't just be like a piece of skin cell along with like multiple other pieces of skin cells from like dudes and shit, you know what I mean? From another dude. Like, that makes no sense. There would be so much more. There'd be vaginal discharge. There would be so much more. The vid really isn't really doing the work the appeals court did. I think he could be innocent and all of the blame for multiple other causes was put on him. If he knew about the others, why would he willingly take the fall for it and not give up any information in exchange for a reduced sentence? I feel like it has to be an innocent fall guy. Multiple cops are doing it and all others are doing it too.
Logic indicative of some sort of agenda. And finally, we said there was one more accuser who rendered only not guilty verdicts, who nonetheless warranted looking at in some depth. The reason for that is that while her charges were ultimately of no consequence in the court of Oklahoma, they've been particularly devastating in the court of public opinion. The accuser is Shardarian Hill. She's the 22-year-old who Holtzclaw infamously added on Facebook. Something to state with total clarity. There is no defense for a police officer friending someone online who they've come across while on duty, let alone apprehended. It's hard to imagine why an officer would cross that line if there wasn't anything sinister behind it. To entertain that, you would definitely need this person and the officer to have encountered each other under circumstances that weren't typical and could be envisioned as fostering some kind of bond or a feeling of particular concern for this person's long-term welfare in the officer. And it just so happens that Holtzclaw and Hill crossed paths under just those sorts of circumstances. Hill was smoking PCP in a car outside Liberty Station Apartments, along with her friend and a dealer when Holtzclaw pulled up. The dealer fled and Holtzclaw put Hill in the back of his patrol car after she refused a search and gave him a fake name. A female officer was called to conduct the search, and when she arrived and performed it, she found a vial of PCP on Hill. The officer put the glass vial of PCP in the back of the patrol car, and during a moment when the officer was preoccupied, Hill pretended to faint, fell down into the car, grabbed the vial with her teeth, sucked it into her mouth, and crunched on it. The officers had her spit out as much as she could, but now Hill had ingested a potentially lethal dose of liquid PCP, as well as possibly having loose shards of shattered glass in her body. She was rushed to hospital, and as Holtzclaw was the arresting officer, Hill was still in his custody, and so he was obligated to go with her. Holtzclaw was indeed with Hill in her hospital room for several hours. She was sentient, though very high for much of that time, and during those hours they talked. Hill gave him her real name, some of her background, and presumably they built some level of rapport. Certainly not to the point where they became friends or Holtzclaw felt like he could let her go. As soon as she was released from hospital, he booked her into county jail on charges of possessing a controlled dangerous substance and destroying evidence. That notwithstanding, it appears he did have genuine concern for her and wanted her to stay out of trouble after she got out of county. At least that's the defence's ascribed motivation for why he followed up with her via Facebook a few weeks later. When deciding whether or not you're willing to interpret things in such a generous light, there are two main things to consider. One is the Facebook messages themselves. Over the course of January through April of 2014, they chat back and forth sporadically. Their initial messages are innocuous.
Damn, took you long enough. I've been waiting, lol. You still got my number, right? Is this your sister's account? No, it's mine. I'm the one you had my twinish charm on. Thanks for looking out. I can tell the difference between you and your sister. Obviously, you guys are twins. You staying out of trouble? You better be.
At one point, Holtzclaw attempts to get Hill on the phone, which doesn't look great, but isn't incriminating either. His only stated intentions are keeping her out of trouble. He asks how her court appearance went, and when Hill reveals she's been back in jail, Holtzclaw's messages read as taken aback and concerned. He again tries to get her on the phone, and states his reason is getting a full explanation so he can understand how she got put back in jail. He says maybe he can help in some way. After Hill remains unresponsive, Holtzclaw sends her a final message, telling her that she has some outstanding warrants she should take care of, and to stay out of trouble. No incriminating text messages were ever uncovered, and they never spoke over the phone. To reiterate, it was certainly inappropriate for Holtzclaw to have contacted Hill via social media and text, but it doesn't substantially further the charge that he viciously raped her while she was in hospital. And that brings us to the second thing to consider, Hill's account itself. It was somewhat brushed over in the prosecution half of this video, because the full details of it actually better serve the defense. Shadarian Hill's story of how she was victimized by Daniel Holtzclaw is, in the purest sense of the word, absolutely incredible. Hill claimed that Holtzclaw groped her breast in her hospital room while the door was unlocked and the hospital was buzzing with staff. He took off his heavy gun belt and had her perform oral sex on him, completely leaving it to chance that a doctor or any personnel from the nursing station situated just 10 feet from the door didn't pop in during the assault. After the forcible oral sodomy was complete, Holtzclaw called Hill's mother and allowed them to talk over speakerphone. Hill told her mother about her arrest, and that her new police officer friend was going to help get her out of trouble. This caused Hill's mother to laugh at her and tell her she was high, after which the phone call ended. Holtzclaw then immediately walked up to her bed and put 2 of his fingers in her vagina. During all of this, there was one big obstacle to overcome in order to avoid getting caught by hospital staff. Hill was hooked up to a heart monitor and other equipment tracking her vitals the entire time she was in the room. If her heart or respiration rate were ever to spike dramatically, a nurse would be alerted and immediately go to the room. Holtzclaw's way around this? He instructed Hill to keep her heart and respiration rates at a normal level while he raped her. And
what the fuck? Okay, dude, that's like no shot. I mean, there's no way. I mean, this got thrown out anyway. I mean, not thrown out, but like this didn't actually, the jury did not believe this, for the record. I don't think, right?
Miraculously, she did. Detective Rocky Gregory never seemed dubious of the plausibility of Shadarian Hill's scenario when he interviewed her, and at the very end of the interview, there was a jaw-dropping moment that also never caused him to question her credibility.
So this is good evidence?
Oh, come on, dude. Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck?
Well, you tell me.
I think so, because I mean, y'all, even if he didn't even rape nobody or nothing, he's still he's been in contact with people that he arrested.
Oh my fucking god, dude. What the fuck? Dude, this is absolutely crazy. Don't say free this man.
Whatever you ultimately think.
Bro, she literally said, even if he didn't, did you like that? Like, here, I'll run it back for those of you who missed it, because that was fucking insane.
Also, never caused him to question her credibility.
So this is good evidence?
Well, you tell me.
I think so, because I mean, y'all, even if he didn't even rape nobody or nothing, he's been.
Okay. I still think he's definitely, I still think he's very likely guilty, but not of like half the fucking people. Like some of them 100% got sexually assaulted by someone else, and then the police like literally were like, oh no, that's this guy. Okay? And this person just straight up framed him. Straight the fuck up. I mean, she says it. Like, even if he didn't, like, even rape nobody or nothing, he's still getting in. He's been in contact with people that he's arrested. I think the 57-year-old, like, grandma one, it seems wild, but, like, it's just that's the one that's like likely, you know what I mean? Because like, why in the ever loving fuck would a 57-year-old grandma like actually be like, oh, this is. And I think because it was like the most. Is a crackhead prostitute. Okay, first of all, that's a ban. The 57-year-old grandma is not a crackhead prostitute, you fucking psycho. No priors. Like, okay, no priors. GPS is off. He's on his way home, but like still. GPS is off. Lets her go, even if she's drunk. And because that one is like so, because that one is like such a fucking solid one that will get a lot of media attention, as opposed to like, you know, the sex workers that were, you know, on drugs and stuff for the testimony and shit. That's the reason why they were like, this is the most high profile one, and we're gonna fucking pin all the other ones on him.
Whatever you ultimately think of Holtzclaw's overall guilt, that Shadarian Hill's accusations made it to court should be enough to convince you that the investigators and prosecution prioritized laying charges and putting Holtzclaw in jail.
Like some of those women that we saw, like some of the early testimonies, those were, I 100% believe those testimonies. The problem is the cops were like, oh yeah, that 5'9" black person that you just mentioned, the 5'9" black cop? Yeah, that must be Daniel Holtzclaw. Like, that's fucking insane. Like, you literally were, you just took that and you tried to fit the profile of someone else. Like, that's frame, dude. That's just straight up framing.
Over getting to the real truth about anything. There are just some of those cases. Cases that truly capture the public's attention and tap into...
God damn, dude, this case was crazy. This is actually a fucking crazy situation. The Supreme Court denied his appeal, yeah.
...to their emotions. the qualities that bring national and international attention to a case and cause some people to form an obsession with them.
Actually, even with the grandma, like, how likely is it that the rape kit would come back negative? The rape kit wasn't with the cops. The rape kit was with the nurse. It's like they actually ran it with a.
Very greatly. It could be because the person facing grave allegations is a famous and formerly adored individual, or perhaps a defendant with no previous notoriety just strikes a chord with the public. Something about them just inspires.
Like, that was fucking open as shut, though. Like, Casey Anthony 100% did it. Like,
As an irrepressible sense of ire. It could be that the crimes are so grisly that many people find it hard not to develop a morbid fascination with the perpetrator. Sometimes the themes of a case will so perfectly dovetail into some of the biggest social and political discussions of the times that they naturally lend themselves to mass media coverage. And there's one quality that especially serves to suck some people into spending countless hours reading, watching, listening, and talking about a case. The frustrating mark of ambiguity. When only one conclusion can be true, but every option seems to have glaring problems with it. When deciding your ultimate verdict in the highly controversial case of Daniel Holtzclaw, you will inevitably be faced with the requirement to make a big jump. If leaning toward innocence, your main hurdle will be Janie Liggins' initial complaint. Over the course of the last hour, there may have been a question lingering in the back of your mind. What's the motivation? And the answer is, there isn't one. Or at least there isn't a very clear and compelling one. People have theories. There are arguments that a mixture of marijuana and medication she had taken shortly before getting in her car could have essentially caused her to hallucinate the assault, and proponents of that theory will point to several inaccuracies in her physical description of Holtzclaw as supporting evidence. But of course there's a gigantic difference between misremembering how someone looked and completely imagining that they forced you to put their penis in your mouth. If Liggins were experiencing that level of delirium, it's hard to see how she would have been able to maintain the motor skills to make it home. There's monetary motive, of course, and Liggins along with others have gone on to file civil suits, which may pay out millions of dollars. To think the other accusers could have smelled money when the police came knocking is one thing, but the idea that when Janie Liggins was pulled over in the early morning hours of June 18th, she all of a sudden began hatching a grand scheme to convict an officer of rape, using only her words so that she could go on to make a fortune through legal action, stretches the limits of credulity. She had no history of frivolous complaints before the traffic stop, and hasn't made any allegations against law enforcement or other figures.
Like, it makes no sense. Like, that's why I'm saying the grandma situation is like the wildest one, because like it makes no fucking sense that someone would just like literally have like a normal interaction with a fucking cop and then like be let go, okay? And from his way of describing the situation, like he literally was nice to her. Like, if his testimony is true, which, you know, is directly in opposition with her testimony. You know what I mean? Because he was just like, yeah, go ahead, you know, go on your way. Like, how many altercations, how many interactions do you have with cops in Oklahoma as a black woman in the middle of the night where they, like, let you go without doing anything? Remember, he was caught lying about what he was doing with his girlfriend, though? No, that doesn't... No, that was bullshit. He also turned his GPS shortly beforehand and never called it in. Yeah. The only thing I do know is that, like, it's fucking wild that, like, this amount of evidence was enough to, like, convict a cop nonetheless with like 260 years. That's crazy. He may not have been convicted for all his allegations, but we can expect the top of the hour ad. Oh my fucking God. You fucking piece of shit. I mean, don't throw me the tomatoes. I got duped this time. Okay. I'm running a 60-second ad break here. We're going to finish out this video. If you'd like to no longer see said ads, you already know, ladies and gentlemen. All you need to do is subscribe. You can subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Here's the ad break now.
Figures of authority since. Then there's the motive of malice, that Liggins did it all for revenge, presumably just because she didn't like the way Holtzclaw interacted with her. That this is the most plausible explanation tells you something. The depiction sometimes given of Liggins in the media as a sweet grandma who never put a foot wrong does go a little too far. She isn't perfect, but putting a 27-year-old man away for the rest of his life in response to feeling personally slighted is an extremely wicked thing to do, and nothing is known of Liggins that justifies thinking her capable of it. And also, despite the charges not sticking, the Terry Morris allegations are strange. Daniel Holtzclaw was one of only 2 officers that ran a check on her around the time she made her complaint. Her complaint was specifically that an officer had put his penis in her mouth for a short time and that he did not ejaculate. And then only a few weeks later, Liggins comes forward to accuse him of just the same type of assault with no knowledge of any of that. Of course...
Yeah, that's... Okay, that's the thing, like... That's the thing that just, like, is mind-boggling. Because, like, there's no way she would have known that. You know what I mean? Oh, my God. Unless it was one of those, like, fucked up cop fraternities where... You know how, like... in the sheriff's department in Los Angeles, like, they have actual gangs? And in those gangs, like, they will literally, like, you get tatted up and shit, and you have to kill someone to become a part of one of those. This is real, by the way. The LA Sheriff's Department actually has gangs, and they do gang initiations. And as a part of the gang initiations, and they're white supremacist gangs, you have to literally murder someone. Okay? That's a real thing. So... what if, like, yeah, they have challenge coins and shit for it too. What if the Oklahoma department's, like, initiation was, like, that you need to put your dick in someone's mouth or something, like one of the people that you arrest. And that's why it, like, matches up with so many of these fucking cases. I guess ritualized rape is responsible. I don't think it's more likely than him just being one of the rapists. You know what I mean? Like, as a part of their initiation or some shit. I mean, dude, cops do some fucked up shit, dude. These are documented 18 documented gangs within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. It came out like last year originally. Here's a LA Magazine article on it. Like it briefly got coverage. There was a whistleblower, Deputy Art Gonzalez, that like described in Compton. Described in Chapo had the journalist on as well.